midst of inequality and injustice? What stands between us hindering our reach to freedom? What will ever stop us from removing barriers between social groups? Who will help us gain a fair globalization? Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sarah Khalid, your Master of Ceremony. And on behalf of NDUMUN and my fellow executive committee, I welcome you to the first ever roundtable discussion marking World Day of Social Justice's first celebration at NDU under the theme, The Challenge of Providing Social Justice for Lebanese Citizens and Refugees in Lebanon. For 3 consecutive years in a row, NDUMUN has been building its program on the strong pillars of diplomacy and leadership. Our NDUMUN members have participated in international and national conferences such as Rotaract Global MUN, Future We Want MUN, Spain MUN, AUB MUN, and many others, and they have won numerous awards. NDU's support to our great program has been the reason behind our continuous success, and for that we are very grateful. We are exceptionally grateful and would like to thank Mr. Antoine Malouf from Lebanon Host Community Support Program, LHSP, under UNDP, who helped us in this event from day one. To our speakers, Mr. Martin Bourgeot and Mr. Emmanuel Gignac for participating today. To our Dr. Daniel Soub, Chairperson at the Faculty of Law and Political Science at NDU. To Dr. Shelby Zgheir, Dean of Students. To Mr. Milham Rishdin, Assistant Dean of Students and MUN Advisor. All MUN ex-committee and members. Thank you to the Dean of FLPS, Dr. Sidar Mansour, and instructors. Thank you to all deans, chairpersons, faculty members, and our students for attending today. And finally, a special thanks to the Student Union and NTU Club members for attending. NTU has recently won the SDG Milestones Award in the Academia category, and NTU was presented with this award during the Multi-Stakeholder SDG Forum held on October 18, 2018 in the Grand Serai. NDUMUN continuously aligns with the goals set by the United Nations. For this reason, it aims to highlight the important roles that the UNDP and UNHCR are conducting in relation to the critical case of ensuring justice for the citizens in Lebanon and refugees in Lebanon, respectively. Today's program involves these 2 very important UN organizations that have been working to ensure that social justice is maintained for all citizens and residents in Lebanon. These organizations' works have been heightened ever since the refugee crisis began in 2011. But before we learn more about the accomplished efforts of these organizations, we would like to hear a word from Dr. Eli Batter, Vice President of Academic Affairs, representing NDU's support to social justice. Dr. Eli Batter, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good morning. Good morning to our friends from the UNDP. Welcome to NDU. Good morning to my colleagues, the faculty, the deans, and most importantly, our students. When I asked the Dean of Students back in 2000, and not you, Shelley, Dr. Fahad, to create the Model UN, and I thought we are light years away from the other chapters that exist in other universities. But I thought it's better late than never. Well, and I proudly say, my students proved me wrong. Over the past 3 years, they have put the Model UN chapter on the map of NDU and on the scene on the map of Lebanon. So they proved me wrong, and they have done a great job. So thank you very much for the past MUN chapters and to the current ones. And here I would like to say thank you to Mariam. Thank you very much. She was the secretary before Stephanie, and now we have Stephanie and other friends and students working with the Model UN. We value a lot the out-of-class education, and what you have done today, or what you are doing today, exemplifies out-of-class education. In fact, I just came from the Council of Deans, where we were debating and discussing active learning. What you are doing today is the active learning that I know about. So hopefully this active learning will spread across all our curricula, and we are working hard on the Council of Deans to give our students the best education they can have. In addition to the practical training, that when they go into the workforce, they will hit the ground running, and the employers will say, well, this is an NDU graduate. So this is our commitment to you, on top of all the academic achievements that this university is doing, be it accreditation, high standards, or what have you. You have our promise as administrators, as dean, VPA, and president, to keep on advancing our curricula so that we serve you better and you serve your country better. Social justice for the Lebanese citizens and the refugees, you say?
Yes.
Well, let's start with the Lebanese citizens first. I do understand, and from a citizen point of view, that social justice is nothing but rights and responsibilities. That means I have some responsibility toward my country, but my country has also responsibility towards me as a citizen. Where are we from that? I think our government cannot even spell social justice, let alone practice social justice. Before we speak of social justice, we have to speak of corruption. Corruption is the anti-social justice theme. We have corruption in our government, in our systems, that are really now hitting the core of Lebanon across all sectors of the government. So hopefully one day we can speak of social justice after we clean up the country from the corruption and those who are standing in line, and not really standing in line, but rather cutting and taking a short path towards success, if they call it success, which is not really success. Corruption is really something that we need to tackle before we tackle social justice. But anyway, this is your theme today, and I'm really glad that you're going to be debating the social justice issue. We, as far as I'm concerned, as Lebanese, we are doing our share of social justice towards our government. We are paying taxes, aren't we? Every one of us here is paying a tax. If you're not working as a student, well, you're buying gasoline and you're paying the VAT. So your contribution to the government, to the welfare of the government, to the welfare of the state, it is being done. What are we getting in return as citizens? Zero. In 9 years, I will be at 65 years old. And if I don't really have already secured my insurance, health insurance, if I did not save money for my retirement, if I did not take care of my parents, which I am today, who's going to do that? The government of Lebanon? I don't think so. So we are basically ignored by this government about social justice. And social justice, as I said, is a rights and responsibility. That means it's a two-way street. Well, I am contributing to the welfare of Lebanon. I'm not going to disclose a number. I computed how much taxes I paid since I came back to Lebanon back in the mid-90s. It's a hefty sum. It's a big sum of money. If I sell it today, it probably buys me a nice villa in a very nice town. Yet what do I get in return? Nothing. This is something that we need to keep on hammering about. We need to tell our government that you have responsibility towards us as we have responsibility towards you, and hopefully one day we have a listening ear. But I don't want to put a gloomy picture for you here today. I don't see it happening very, very soon. I hope you will prove me wrong, or the government will prove me wrong, like my student proved me wrong when I created the Model UN, or at least asked for creation of the Model UN. Thank you for listening to me. I wish you a successful day, and I look forward to hearing the panel discussion on social justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Badr, for your support, the support of NDUMUN since day one, and we would like to thank the president of NDU, Father Pierre Najm, who is sadly not with us today. Dr. Badr, your support to our program and the work of the UN is widely appreciated. Now it is time to hear what the rest of NDU thinks about social justice.
Good morning, everyone. This is Elise Nassif, NDUMUN, reporting live from Notre Dame University on the Day of Social Justice. We went along asking a sample of NDU students and administration on what is social justice and whether justice and power can coexist. This is what they had to say.
As I understand it, social justice is a relationship between an individual and a society.
Sharing in their human life a kind of justice that might look as fair as can be.
Working to make sure that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law.
No discrimination.
People, regardless of their gender, of their sex, of their social rank or status, have equal rights and equal opportunities.
The same rights and the same duties in front of the law.
Give equal chances to all people.
فينا نحقق social justice مش منا نحن من اللي معهم مصاري، إذا اللي معهم مصاري عرف يساعدوا غيرهم بنكون ممنونين.
Their basic human needs, their basic human rights. It is something that is written in the Universal Declaration for Human Rights.
I understand that the government itself should really play that role in spreading the wealth equally among the individuals.
And I believe that the freedom is your power.
Sometimes you have to rely on power to enforce justice.
Only in the absence of greed.
By theory, they should. They should interdepend on each other and they should serve each other.
And not use power to violate justice.
If we try to zoom into the power, we should remove from the power the negative connotation that it's something that comes from above with no justification.
Yes, they do, but power should be at the service of justice.
Power should always be checked and limited by relevant laws.
Definitely power and social justice can coexist in the context of democracy and not a dictatorship.
Plus that power will be a tyranny if it's practiced without justice.
To watch the full version of the video, kindly visit our social media platforms on Instagram and Facebook, and visit our YouTube channel NDUMUN. For our first roundtable panelist, we would like to welcome Mr. Martin Bourgeot, role of Chief Technical Advisor of the United Nations Development Programme. Mr. Martin has previously occupied the position of Justice, Security and Human Rights Specialist in New York. He has also worked on joint projects that promote community security and access to justice with the UNHCR. Mr. Martin, you have the floor.
Mr. Vice President, dear Professor, dear students, thank you for organizing this event to celebrate the World Day of Social Justice, and thank you for inviting UNDP. The tragic event of last week, the self-immolation of a father for his children to have the right to education, tell us of the importance of social justice. For UNDP, the pursuit of social justice for all is at the core of our global mission to promote human development. UNDP works in close to 170 countries and territories, and when we ask people what justice really means to them, they don't just refer to the visible parts of the legal system, to the courts, to the police, or to the prosecutors. What people value the most is equality, fairness, equity, laws and institutions that protect against discrimination and abuse of authority, like what was said actually in your first part. And as the students that were and professor interviewed said, social justice means equal access to opportunities, access to education, to health, to decent employment. And promoting social justice means expanding the choice people have to lead the lives which they value. And together we uphold the principle of social justice when we promote pro growth, gender equality, the rights for all to access to education, the rights of LGBTI population, the rights of migrants and refugees. And we advance social justice when we remove barriers that people face because of gender, age, ethnicity, religion, culture, or disability. The past few years, important efforts have been made in Lebanon towards social justice. Major laws and policies have been passed to promote and protect human rights, notably the National Human Rights Action Plan, the law on criminalization of torture, the law on domestic violence, but also the law establishing a National Human Rights Commission. Also, the government of Lebanon engaged the past few years in reforms to transform security institutions that are traditionally state security-centric into services to the population. Here, I think of the new ISF strategy, but also the reform of the municipal police. Those efforts respond to an increasing demand for legal equality within the population, and a 2013 survey demonstrated that the population in Lebanon puts legal equality as the first priority in the area of justice. So there is a demand for security and justice services that are accessible to all, regardless of gender, or origin, or affiliations. UNDP is proud to support those efforts. For example, we have been supporting the transformation of the municipal police into a service for the population since 2016 in partnership with UNHCR. Indeed, the municipal police needs to understand and respond to people's needs, regardless of who you are. Also, UNDP is supporting the ISF in implementing its new strategy by expanding pilot community police station and improving internal accountability systems. Still, while a lot of progress has been done, we know that a lot of efforts still remain to ensure all individuals can enjoy fundamental human rights. The new legal framework will require years of dedicated work for its implementation, and the same applies to the reform I mentioned. So what are the tools available today to promote social justice? I don't know how many of you are aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, but the 2030 Agenda offers a unique framework for all efforts to advance social justice. The SDGs include important commitments to advance social justice, such as ending poverty, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education, achieving gender equality, and empowering women and girls, but also reducing inequalities and promoting decent work for all. The Goal 5 on gender equality is a critical goal to achieve the 2030 Agenda. For that reason, UNDP is promoting gender equality and women promotion across its program. For example, in the area of security in Lebanon, UNDP supports municipalities to recruit female municipal police personnel. Indeed, the municipal police should reflect the diversity of the population and women should be given the same opportunities as men to work as municipal police agents. Another important goal UNDP promotes is the Goal 16 on just and peaceful societies. Goal 16 includes a dedicated target on access to justice, and that target is considered as an important accelerator for progress across the entire 2030 agenda to achieve all the goals, whether it is poverty eradication, gender equality, reducing inequalities, etc. When supporting the implementation of the SDGs, and in particular Goal 16, UNDP pays specific attention to leaving no one behind, which is a cross-cutting focus of the 2030 agenda. And the 2030 agenda calls for all targets to be reached by everyone. And that agenda asks every member state actually for detailed disaggregation of progress by groups to ensure that progress towards the target is reached by all, regardless of your income, gender, age, migratory status, etc. For the Goal 16, leaving no one behind means notably to identify and respond to injustices people face on a daily basis. Indeed, we tend often to focus on technical capacity development or how to achieve the perfect justice institutions. However, justice ultimately is connected with how people live their lives, and not merely with the nature of institutions that surround them. As Amartya Sen said, what should move us is not the realization that the world falls short of being completely just, but that there are clearly remediable injustices around us which we want to eliminate. For that reason, UNDP is supporting jointly with UNHCR the Ministry of Justice and justice sector actors to enhance access to legal aid in Lebanon. Indeed, access to legal aid can have a direct impact on individuals' quality of life, especially for the most disadvantaged. Legal aid empowers them to understand and exercise their rights, and can help to address the root cause of exclusion and systematic biases. The case of legal aid is a good example of how we can work to tackle the daily injustices people face. Indeed, today, legal aid is provided to the most disadvantaged is mainly limited to legal representation. However, people's need in Lebanon, as demonstrated in a recent survey, they relate to minor disputes and civil cases such as family, labor, indebtedness, land rights, for which information, legal advice, assistance, mediation, and education is necessary. For that reason, UNDP support for the past is supporting the justice, a legal aid model that would offer this type of services to the population. Leaving no one behind also means including all groups in reforms that impact people's lives. Inclusion and participation to reform is critical for the success of those reforms. And this is what came out from the Lebanese We Want consultation in 2013, and that informed the 2030 agenda. In Lebanon, participants said that how reforms are being conducted is even more important than what those very reforms entail. The how is more important than the what. And at UNDP, this is also our belief, and that is why we seek to engage with all relevant partners in programs we support. For example, when we support the development of a new standard operating procedure for the municipal police, we actually organize consultation across all municipalities of Lebanon to understand from municipalities what they like the municipal police to look like. The extent to which our collective efforts are able to promote and protect the rights of the most marginalized, including women, youth, persons with disabilities, minority groups, LGBTI, migrants, and refugees, is key to achieving social justice and essential for leaving no one behind on the path to a peaceful and sustainable future. Collective effort means academic institutions and students have a critical role to play, and we hope to work with you in our effort to support Lebanon in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, for that insightful presentation. For our second roundtable panelist, we would like to welcome Mr. Emmanuel Gignac, Deputy Representative of Operations for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Mr. Emmanuel has accumulated to over 25 years of experience in dealing with refugees and has occupied the position of Senior Emergency Coordinator. Mr. Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Here. Good afternoon. Dr. Badr just got out, but I want to thank him, of course, but all the professors and the students, organizers of this event today for inviting me, us, the UN, Martha and myself, to participate on this day. I want to express my fact that I'm impressed that it's good to see the young generation, the mounting generation, the one that will soon, take control of leadership in the development of the nation. Pay interest for an issue as important and as complex as social justice, and we can spend a lot of time. As a matter of fact, the UN was founded, as you know, after the Second World War, mainly to address issues that are of social injustices, which starts by social injustice starts by discrimination, and what is at the cornerstone of the UN, as you know, is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a very, very important history of humankind. It's a very important not only document, but institution and step. Now we know how challenging it is to keep up to the standards of the Charter. I haven't prepared a speech. I have a presentation and we'll go through it. But just to say that I will speak, of course, specifically on refugees and of course refugees here in Lebanon. Just to say that, and I'm sure you're aware of that, but it's always good to remind us what a refugee is. A refugee, it's often, we refer to refugees sometimes as migrants, or even here also political refugees, but refugee actually has a very precise legal definition. It's a person basically based on well-founded fear of persecution based on its race or religion or nationality or belonging to a social group, etc., feel that cannot avail itself any longer of the protection of its states, and therefore is leaving its country to seek protection elsewhere. That's a very interesting phenomenon because the definition shows that, as was mentioned already, the responsibility to protect is in the hands of the state in general, and surely here also in Lebanon. That's what is one of the key responsibilities of the state, is to protect its own citizen, in protecting the wide sense of the word, not only, of course, security, protection from violence, etc., but also social protection, clearly. So refugees basically are people who are fleeing their country because they feel unsafe in their country, but mostly because they feel that their state no longer is in a position to provide the usual protection that they would expect. And so it's a strange phenomenon, because then you have other states who will welcome these people, although they're not their citizens, and they're not meant to become their citizens. They're not migrants in that sense. Many people migrate to the United States or to Canada, for instance, they become citizens of the United States, Canada, the Lebanese did that. But that's not the purpose of refugees. Refugees are not meant to be, are not migrants in that sense. They're not migrating to become citizens of another country. They're moving, or they're migrating, if you wish, or crossing the border because they're seeking protection until the situation is stabilized again or safe, and they feel, they feel safe to return. So it's an interesting situation. It's interesting, problematic. It's a very challenging one. So this was just as a way of introduction. I'm going to go through. So I mean, Lebanon here, as was said, has received its first refugees from Syria, fleeing the war in Syria since starting in 2011. It's been trickling in initially in 2012, and 13, and 14, and 15, and the numbers were just growing. And it was a huge concern for Lebanon. First time ever Lebanon was confronted with such a crisis. It is, as to put it in crude terms, it's the largest number of refugees per capita in the world. It's simple as that. There's no other country in the world that is hosting as many refugees per capita. Okay, because that's important to put this in a proportion. Lebanon is a 10,000 square kilometer country, if I'm not mistaken, in a population range of 4 million, 4.5. And there you have well over 1 million refugees in the country. UNHCR has registered, currently we have a bit less than 1 million. It went up to 1.2 million, and it slowly went down, but we've stopped registration of refugees since May 2015 at the request of the Lebanese authorities. And so many others arrived, and so the exact number is not known because not all those who arrived after May 15 have been registered. But the estimates are, the agreement between basically, let's say, the international community, including the UN and the Lebanese authorities, at least the working figure for the LCRP, the Lebanese Crisis Response Plan, is around 1.5 million. So it's a bit but so you see a huge surge of people arriving. If you translate that in terms of geographical location, this is what you get. That's another unique situation in Lebanon. You don't have a camp policy in Lebanon. Lebanon has refused from the onset to allow for a camp policy, probably because of the bad experience with the Palestinian refugees in camps and the militarization of the camps, etc. So there was fear that if we put Syrian refugees in camp, it could create similar phenomena. So people basically are scattered all throughout the territory, which is, there's pros and cons in putting refugees in camps or not, and it's probably better not to put them in camps for the reasons I just mentioned. But then you have a lot of challenges of having people scattered all around the territory, because then they rely on the infrastructure, the national infrastructure, whether it's water, whether it's electricity, whether it's health, school, etc. And so this is a huge, it's a burden on Lebanon as a whole, especially in a context where Lebanon has not had, for various reasons related to its history, a very strong public service system or social protection system. Maybe just to say, you've got the majority basically of the people are in Bekaa and Baalbek and Al-Aqab. These are the three main locations in terms of numbers. Of course, you do have a lot of people who ended up in what we call these informal tented settlements that you may have seen, which are not camp per se. They are settlements on private land. The refugees negotiated with landlords, and they are paying rent for these for this plot of land that they're utilizing, on which they have set up very basic rudimentary shelter. There's been also a strict policy by the Lebanese authorities not to develop these settlements, put anything that would be durable or sustainable, so that it would lead to kind of a permanency or settlement over that would be permanent at one point. So you see these camps are kept in a very rudimentary, precarious situation. Just to move on the what we call the response framework, it's as I said, it's a huge operation. It's a huge It's a huge challenge. There's been a huge international solidarity when it comes to supporting Lebanon with funding. So what has been set up is what is called the Lebanon Crisis Response Plan, which is a collective strategic framework of action where you have over 120 appealing agencies, either UN, NGOs, and others, and mainly supported by a number of donor countries. Just to give you an idea, in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, 2.4 billion had been requested, appealed for, and 1.7 billion were contributed. You can see the main thrust of the framework, which is around ensuring protection, providing immediate assistance, and support through services through the national system, but also support and maintain the continuous stability of Lebanon, which is, for the reason I've explained, this huge ratio of per capita number of refugees. I go quickly through 5 key main challenges that we see with the refugee population. First, in terms, we do on a yearly basis what we call a vulnerability assessment. It's been carried out now since 5 years, since 14, nearly 4 years of trends. Basically, it's what we call the minimum expenditure basket, what people need basically to live, and the survival minimum expenditure basket. And what we call the survival minimum expenditure basket is $2.9 per day per person. And you have now it being more or less constantly over around 50% of the refugee population under extreme poverty, and then around 70% under the poverty level. This gives you so you can see that it has remained stable, probably thanks to the international assistance that has been pouring, but you can see that you are dealing with a population that is by far much more poorer than it was back in its country. Well, I don't have the statistics, but I don't think that when people were back in Syria, the level of poverty was as high. Just on the other issue of accommodation, this gives you a bit statistics on how people are accommodated. Overall, more than 50% are accommodated in very precarious conditions, what we call substandard conditions. The issue of residency, Lebanon is not a party to what we call the 1951 Convention on Refugees, which is a framework of rights which states decide to sign up to on a voluntary basis. You have over 150 states in the world who have signed the 1951 Convention or the 1967 Protocol, which is a same type of framework but with some slight differences. And these are the key refugee instruments providing, ensuring the rights of refugees. So states are invited to adhere to that, to sign up to the convention, but that's on a voluntary basis. Once they do that, usually they will develop laws and regime in the country to give a special treatment to refugees. It's not the case in Lebanon. So basically, refugees are like any other foreigners, so they need to have residency permit. And the issue of residency permit has been a long issue. I mean, initially it was provided to everyone free of charge, and then eventually it was they were asking for $200 and people per permit, and people were not able to afford that. So you can see that the level of percentage of people holding residency permit has been decreasing. There's been now an effort together with GSO to change that, and the waiver, the fee has been waived, and now there is a renewal of residency permit that is happening, which will of course help removing all these the consequences that result in not having. I mean, it may seem, we take it for granted, but not having documents gives you legality in the country is extremely challenging. It means that the number of services or even your movements in the country are restricted. Here again, birth registration is another. You have a fairly complex birth registration process for foreigners, and you can see it here. And refugees are not always aware, so they stop at step 1 or 2. This is a big problem for us because we're trying to address, because if Syrian refugees born in Lebanon, there are about 145,000 who were born since 2011 on the Lebanese circuit. If they don't get birth certificate when they will return to Syria, they will not be recognized as Syrians, and because they're not Lebanese, they will end up stateless without citizenship, and that's a problem we don't want to face. Quickly on child protection, it is a growing problem. We see child labor increasing, but also marriage of young girls also increasing as a coping mechanism because of the increasing level of poverty. Very quickly, I'll jump this, but this is a kind of a package of interventions and assistance that we provide which represent in a sense a kind of a social protection system itself for refugees, and we try to implement through, as much as possible, through national institutions. It is important to do this. I'll skip this. This is the what we call our cash transfers through an ATM card. But I'll jump directly to support to institutions and the host community, which is very important, as I mentioned, in order to preserve the stability, social cohesion, and overall, a protection space for refugees. It's a big challenge. We are not meeting the needs, and we know that, but we're working closely with authorities to keep on, supporting. The partnership with UNDP is important for us because UNDP is a development agency, which we are not, and has a mandate to support, develop Lebanese institution, and we believe it's important because it is the condition to make sure that refugees can remain here in good conditions until such a time they can return back to Syria. So I'll stop here. These are the ministries that we're supporting, but I will just stop it here, and I'm happy to take some questions at a later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you, Mr. Martin, for your presentation. We would like to ask you now, please, to head over the roundtable panel in order to discuss further the works that you have been doing, and I would like to also welcome among you your moderator, the Secretary General of this year's NDUMUN, Stephanie Staley.
As we all know that the theme for this year's social justice is if you want peace and development, work for social justice. And I think this is a very important theme that we can all relate to. On a more specific note, Lebanon itself does not identify them as refugees, rather identifies them as...
I will start. As I said, there is a legal framework that is basically providing fish for refugee and also rights, etc. And Lebanon hasn't signed that convention. So we are not, again, it's a voluntary. If Lebanon wants to do this one day, we'll do it. It's up to the country to decide this. There's no obligation to do this. It's not. We don't have any judgment that it's good or bad. It's each country is sovereign, and they make a sovereign decision when they decide to sign this convention. So for us, whether you call them slaves or refugees, what is important is that they have this right to remain here and not forced back into Syria, where their life is safe. And I was referring to the Human Rights Declaration. Actually, it's interesting to see that one of the provisions of the declaration refers before even the convention was elaborated in 1951. So as you know, the declaration was made initialized in 1948. There is a paragraph or a provision on the right to seek asylum as a human right, basically, and the right to be received as a refugee. So it's interesting that and Lebanon has been doing that. So yes, of course. And there is a lot of tension about the issue because it's been lasting for 8 years now, and we understand that. I mean, we understand that because it happens in many other countries where a refugee situation starts and people think they will be around for 3 weeks or a year at maximum, then they will return. and nobody knows actually. It ends up, lasting 5 years, 6 years. Now we're in an 8th year now. We're approaching the 8th year anniversary, and some are returning, but nothing is significant. And it looks like refugees could be there still for some time, and that's something that is important to highlight, that the share that Lebanon has been providing to maintain refugees here, a high cost, with of course the support of the international community, with some opportunities, etc. I think overall it's remarkable, and it will remain in the history of Lebanon. You don't do things always because it brings you money or advantages, material advantages. Also because, on moral ground, when you take a stance, these things are never forgotten, ever. Even in 100 years, I think that whatever happens with Syria, they will never, never forget, what Lebanon did for its citizens, who's hosting them for so long.
Yes.
So that would be your question.
Thank you. So Martin? All right. We will be taking a few questions from the audience now. I'm sure lots of people have prepared questions for you. Yes? Can we have a mic? Please stand, stating your name, and for whom you would like to address your question.
Hello, I think my question would be more fitting to Martin. My name is Ronnie, I'm an NDU alumni. So I dug my feet into the job market, so to say, and I've noticed that there's a lot of issues when it comes to the labor law in Lebanon that the companies are able to abuse. So I'm wondering if the UNDP addresses any specific issues with the labor law or not.
Thanks for your question. Good luck for finding a job that actually you would enjoy. UNDP has a very broad mandate. Actually, it's, as Emmanuel said, it's a mandate of development. So we support state institutions in many areas. But in Lebanon, actually, the work that we do has been more related to the response to the Syrian crisis. So how to support national institutions to better respond to the Syrian crisis. So I'm not aware that we work specifically, for example, on labor law legislation. Also because I think for many years our focus has been more on implementation of existing legal framework rather than pushing for new laws, because once you have a new law, it's good, but what matters for you actually and anyone is how the law is being implemented. In the area of labor law, I would say the work now that we are initiating with the Ministry of Justice to establish actually to enhance legal aid services. To me, that would be a place where you could go. That's actually our vision. That's tomorrow there is a place in a municipality where you can get information, advice, counseling on a conflict you may have with your lawyer and how to solve it without, without having to contract a lawyer, which is very costly, without waiting actually for an incident to happen. So that is something what we are working, enhancing legal aid and in relation to labor law. I hope that tomorrow this is a service that you can have in your municipality. But this will take years to develop but this is something we work on.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you, Ronnie. Do you have any? Yes.
Mr. Emmanuel, I am aware that you were the UNHCR coordinator in northern Iraq at one point in time, and that you've discussed Syrian refugees and internally displaced persons in Erbil during the Foreign Affairs and International Development Committee meeting. Do you consider Lebanon to be a country representing the symptoms of internally displaced persons due to the distribution of people after the civil war, like specifically set and religious-based distribution of the demographic by area.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question. If I consider
Lebanon to be a country presenting the symptoms of internally displaced persons.
Well, as far as I know, you had internally displaced people as a result of the civil war that spanned over the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and 1990. I understand that there might still be some people officially displaced. You had, of course, the war in 2006, which displaced massively people. That was certainly not a confessional one, I mean, not internal. The cause were external. The Civil War, my answer to your question is no. I don't think that the confessional system in Lebanon leads to or favors displacement. It favors, it has led to tensions in the past, but I must say that any other country in the world would have imploded with such diversity. And the way Lebanon is coping with its diversity in confessions is, I think, remarkable. I mean, I keep on reading on Lebanon and the history because I found it amazing. I mean, not everything is perfect by far in Lebanon, but I must say, and the confession system is, politically leading to a lot of challenges, to say the least. And I won't go further in commenting, but that's I was going to say that's the hand of God. I mean, that's what Lebanon was given as as a setting. But it's a source of also of richness. And the little I know, when you talk to Lebanese, I mean, they would never give this for nothing in the world. This would mean the end of Lebanon if you didn't have this diversity of profession. So, like everything, each country has its own advantages and disadvantages, whether it's geographical or it's climate. I come from Canada. Half of the is quite cold. We have ice, etc. But that's it. So, but no, I don't see this as a. I think that the problem you have right now in Lebanon is the presence of huge presence of refugees because of the war in Syria, which has nothing to do with Lebanon, unfortunately. And this problem, is affecting the entire region. It's not only Lebanon hosting refugees. Jordan is also hosting a large number. Turkey also. And obviously, it's becoming not only a regional but always a world security issue. And the problem, the solution has to be found. There's been some development in Syria recently with the regime regaining strength, etc. But people don't feel yet ready to return. We'll see how this will go.
Thank you. I would just like to apologize on behalf of the students who continuously laugh when the classes start.
No, I understand.
Well, thank you so much. I have a question for Mr. Martin. The government recently announced that Syrian refugees are only admitted to Lebanon in case of a severe humanitarian crisis. That's the only reason where they are allowed to stay further. How is this negatively impacting Syrian refugees and the work of UNDP? Impacting, yes. Your work specifically.
UNDP, and maybe it's a question to UNHCR, but UNDP, we work actually, we are a development agency, so we would work for all, regardless of who you are. So I think the major program that we have, which is the Lebanese Host Support Program, works in the two T1 municipalities most affected by the crisis, and there we develop services, whether it is developing waste treatment plant or water plant or other services for the population, and those services are for all. So I think in the United Nations, the agency that caters, specifically to refugees is UNHCR. For us, the mandate is actually to work for all, but without discrimination. So when we work, for example, right now, reforming the municipal police, we do consultation at local level with all groups, including with refugees, and we conduct this consultation with UNHCR to understand, the security concerns of various groups, because each of them may have differentiated needs.
Thank you. We still have time for one more question. Yes, Stephanie?
All right, so my question is for Mr. Emmanuel. You were saying that refugees come to seek protection elsewhere, but my question is, what kind of protection are we offering them when the state of the refugee camps is unacceptable and when there is an inadequate quality of living in the refugee camps? Wouldn't it be better for them to be placed elsewhere, at least somewhere where they will be able to access the basic safety needs their basic safety needs, somewhere developed perhaps, and whose responsibility is this?
It's a good question.
Thank you.
It's a complex one you're raising. There's one mechanism that we utilize. You're referring basically to kind of transferring refugees from a first country of asylum to other countries of asylum, that applies to those. Of course, there is no, as you know, there is no international law, international government. You have in the Lebanon where the government could force all of there. It's questionable, but the population to move to one side of it. But even there, I'm not sure government can do that. So forget about it. If you're going to have transfer of people, it's going to be on a voluntary basis. So you have countries such as Canada, the U.S., Australia, the Scandinavian countries who are willing to show solidarity, for refugee hosting countries in the world, and are willing to take on refugees on what we call resettlement programs. But this remains a fraction. It's very, very, very little. Just to give you an idea, we have, since 2011 here in Lebanon, we've recommended 83,000 people for resettlement, and I would say 75% of them have left, so have been accepted in resettlement countries. But what is 85,000 people against a population of over a million? It's really a drop. It's important for these people, of course. It makes a hell of a difference for the family who wants, wherever it is. But so the reality is that the people are here. So, but I wouldn't be that. I've been in other countries. I've been northern Iraq was mentioned, but I've been also in Chad. I've been in Pakistan. I've been in Kenya at the time of the post-election violence in 2007. I was also Mexico at the time we had one. So I've seen a bit, difficult situations and countries. Unfortunately, look at statistics, and the poorest countries in the world are hosting the largest number of refugees. So you see this in Africa, and that's where you absolutely need to have this international solidarity. It's not a problem of the country that is concerned. I mean, the states. Lebanon should not be left alone with the issue of refugees, the Syrian refugees. They need the support of the region, of the world. It has to be an international group, and that's our job as a UN or an international organization, to speak, to advocate, but also to mobilize resources, attention, but also to work with the governments. The refugees are here. We hope that the situations here will be such soon that they will be able to return. Some have started returning, as a matter of fact. So, we hope that there will be a solution at the end. But yes, of course, I mean, logically, you could think let's bring in the best talent in the world, country in the world. But of course, this does not happen. You cannot move populations like this. Even within a country, it happens in certain countries, but that's not necessarily forced people in countries. What comes to my mind are the Chechen under Stalin during the Second World War, who were forcibly displaced because they were punished. There are a number of small populations that were forced to be moved, but that's not. But there, what you're talking about is having. So what is to have an international, architecture of, encouraging people, not only our nations, as states, not only to give money but also to receive refugees. This is something we believe is very important. It's what we call burden sharing. It's expressing solidarity.
So it's each individual country's responsibility to take on the refugees?
It is a responsibility in the sense of an international responsibility, but in the sense of, it's a voluntary, of course. And you cannot force people to do that. Some countries will say our political situation or our country doesn't allow receiving refugees. When we had the movement of refugees inside Europe in 2015, I was in Serbia, actually, the border of Macedonia. We had 9,000 people returning every day. 9,000 people. If the flow had been stopped in Serbia, after 10 days they would have 90,000 people and just multiply. Unfortunately, we're all moving. It was a flow. Most of them ended up in Germany. But look, I was very, very disappointed by the European reaction. Who raised hands and said, okay, we're going to take them. It was Germany, it was Sweden, and Austria because they were kind of forced to listen to people. But the European Union as a union was not able to get together and have a burden sharing mechanism. So if within something as tightly regulated as the European Union, you're not able to get it, imagine what. That's the challenge that we're facing. So of course you're right. There should be a mechanism where there are too many refugees in a given country that cannot cope with it. Let's see if we can, share the burden. So in the end, we end up, people, countries prefer to give money in a sense, which is, okay, better than nothing, because then you can try to organize better the situation of refugees.
It's still supported.
It is absolutely supported. It's essential. I mean, if it's not, if you not get people that are countries to accept refugees, if they can contribute, this is remarkable. It is international solidarity. And of course, those wealthy countries who can afford it should step up. And that's what we're trying to push as much as we can. So that the burden on, in this case, Lebanon is mitigated. It has been the case. I mean, I can tell you from an experience, my experience, it is one of the operations that has been best funded. If you go we had huge operations, whether in the Afghan refugees in Iran and in Pakistan, but we had the Darfuri refugees into Chad, for instance. In Africa in general, you don't manage to get this level of attention and contribution from the international. So in that sense, I must say Lebanon has been very good, because not only us, it's actually much more the country that has been able to bring it on the international agenda.
Thank you so much. We may take one more question. Yes.
I'm from Germany actually, and it's really interesting to get a different perspective on this topic. But what I would say is, from a European perspective right now, 2015 there might have been some solidarity, but this was very limited. If you look at the situation right now, Europe is trying to tighten its borders, investing heavily in border management, integrated border management, that's what they call it. And I don't really see the situation moving towards more solidarity. I actually see it going the other way, especially with right-wing governments taking more and more control, even in Sweden that has been solidarity with refugees for most of the time. There's a huge influx of right-wing populism, and so I wouldn't paint a very optimistic picture to rely on European support in the near future, especially with the parliament election coming up soon. What do you think about this?
I was not referring to the future, I was referring to the past and to the present. Now, what will happen in the future, I don't know. I tend to agree with you. There is a hardening of positions on migration in general, and refugees are put in the same box as migration, which is different, because migration, for very valid reasons, people are moving because they're not able to cope in their country for very, very good reasons. But for us, refugees is a very specific, it's people fleeing basically for their safety. It's not because they're not able to eat enough, which is a valid reason, but it's because of their life and safety. But even that is being put into question or kind of watered down in the European context. That's why I was referring to 2015. It's been a turning point in Europe. I mean, that's where we really saw that, despite all what Europe was saying, the way people, the population were reacting, the governments are just reflecting what the population is. But again, we're not, we tend to remain optimistic. Asylum has not started in 1951. It's a very ancient tradition, including in this part of the world, and particularly in this part of the world. You had refugees here in Lebanon before the 51 Convention was signed. Just think of the Armenians, for instance. And it has not been a bad experience overall. But it shows again, that what the convention is doing and what UNHCR is doing, in a sense, is a codification of what you would call good practices, but on moral grounds, I would say, when I say this, good practices. And again, we have to hold on this. I mean, it's like human rights, don't take it for granted. These things are not grounded in 2 kilometers concrete slab. It's very, very fragile. And you just need to do a bit of history, starting with those who claim that are the most developed, the most civilized, the Europeans. And this is the part of the world where you had the most blood was shed. The Middle East is nothing compared to what happened in the history of Europe. So, I'm partly European by my mother. My mother's French. I don't have the citizenship. I'm Canadian by my mother. But I like to be realistic about things. So again, I think that we have to remain, especially addressing to the young generation. There are many reasons to believe that the future is grim, but the future is yours. And when I say yours, it's you individually, but also collectively. And collectively, even more than individually. And this is probably what needs to be cultivated, is the sense of community, the sense also of solidarity. You learn it with the family. And this is something that tends to have disappeared in the West, the sense of family, which I found very alive here in Lebanon. So again, I agree with you, but I want to remain somehow.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to add on that I don't think also we should be pessimistic, because it's true that the agenda on borders and also counter-terrorism actually has been quite heavy by the international community here in Lebanon. But to give an example of what you can do, what we can do, as individuals, as institutions, this was a concern actually with UNHCR, but with also other UN agencies, UNICEF, etc. And 1.5 years ago, actually, we gathered to discuss. Okay, we need to explain to the international community in Lebanon that the priorities in the area of justice and security in Lebanon shouldn't be just border management or counterterrorism. And we developed a document actually to tell embassies that as United Nations we think the priorities should be to reform justice security institutions so that they cater to people's needs and needs of all, including migrants, refugees, or everybody. And this got some traction, So for example, the EU announced, for example, this year they are going to support the reform of the municipal police, but also of the ISF, also in the area of justice. So I think we all are responsible actually to shape, the type of agenda we push for, and this is a social, justice agenda. At the end, what we want is, that people's needs are being responded to, and not just a focus on, hard security issues.
Thank you.
I would just like to say something on this. It's not a question. I'm UNDP, so I would like to just highlight a very important intervention that is going on right now. That is the Lebanon Host Community Support Program that I am part of. We have a very strong partnership with the international community. When you mentioned Germany is a very strong supporter and partner, and the UK, so is the US, Netherlands, and Canada just joined recently. They are actually supporting the communities, the Lebanese communities, most affected by the influx of Syrian refugees. These are projects that are directly responding to the real needs identified by these communities. So there's mapping on the ground, and actual needs are being identified by local stakeholders. So this is important for us to know that the international community is actually supporting Lebanon and the Lebanese people in addition to the Syrian refugees, and both are being taken care of one way or another, although maybe you were talking about opening up borders, that's a very complicated matter. But I think there is a movement in the right direction in terms of leaving no one behind, as UNDP is committed to doing.
Thank you all so much. We have reached the end of today's discussion. I'd just like to thank all of you for attending today and for all your questions and your insightful observations. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Emmanuel, Mr. Martin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Day for Social Justice. And thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Dr. Cedar, Dr. Badr, Mr. Antoine, Dr. Sheffield, and Mr. Milhan. Look us up on social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook, on our latest events at UNDP. Thank you so much for coming.